Welcome to the Narrate podcast, where we aim to tell God's story with our lives. We'll be continuing to post the Sunday message each week, but we want to dive a little deeper and offer some content to supplement your life with God, and that's where our Beyond Sunday series comes in. Join Adam and Narrate staff as they provide thoughtful discussions, ideas, and interviews that go beyond the message you'll hear on Sunday. Hi there. Last Friday we had our first ever owners meeting, and we recorded the audio from that for those of you who weren't able to attend. So this is a live event, so the audio isn't the best in some areas, but we still thought the content was important to share with you all because we've got some exciting things happening at Narrate. So hope you enjoy the replay of our first owners meeting.
Well, welcome. Thanks so much for being here for our first ever Narrate Owners Gathering. I think we've got about 45 to 50 minutes of content. You're mostly going to hear from Adam. We've got a few minutes, and then you get to hear from Brian Anderson as well. He's going to give an update from the council for us. So yeah, 45, 50 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A for about 15 minutes, give you space to answer or ask any questions you've got. And then we'll roll out the coolers. You can hang out. You can ask us questions one-on-one if you'd like, and we'll just spend some time mingling. So thanks for being here. I'm going to turn over to Adam.
Actually, we've tricked you. It's an album release party for Jonathan and Leslie. They're going to come back up here, and that would be way more fun, wouldn't it? You guys need to work on that. We should do that someday. Thank you for being here. We had no idea what to expect. Let me give some context here. I was professionally trained in an environment where we did something called Vision Weekends. And some of you probably have been around long enough to remember Vision Weekend and what we would do. This was kind of a Willow thing where you'd spend a good portion of the summer rolling all these ideas up into a single Sunday, and then you would just have this high energy Sunday and you'd share all of the fun, awesome ideas. That was pre-COVID, which also means back then we had 40 minutes for a sermon, which we don't get anymore because none of us have that kind of attention span. We get 20 or 25. Actually, sometime way before COVID, we stopped doing that. I don't remember why we stopped. And then this last year, there was just all these little things that kind of started showing up on my radar. And we were going to do a Vision Weekend. And then some things happened when I went down to Atlanta. Of course, that's when I went to Atlanta in February and got to hang out with Chris. And he started talking about this thing called a SWOT. And probably many of you know this from the business world, but there's something called a SWOT. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, I didn't turn it on. There we go. Familiar with the SWOT? I can actually remember where I was sitting with him in his truck as we were driving to a coffee shop that was ultimately closed. And he was talking about this thing called strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that just kind of sat in my head for the day that we were there. And then the next day I was like, hey, you know what? The staff, most of us do this offsite every summer, and we have some resources set aside for content. In the last few years, we've sat through this Think conference together. So we couldn't really pay you to come, but we could buy an airplane ticket, and you and your wife could come, and we could do some spiritual direction on one side. And then on the other side, we could do this SWOT analysis. And when my wife shows up, I want you to all give her an applause because she's very late. Okay, so just warning you on that one. Anyway, so what was I talking about? The SWOT analysis, the offsite. So I said, would you come? And he graciously did. So in the morning, what we did is Karen, his wife, took us through some spiritual direction stuff. In the afternoon, he would do the SWOT with us. And that process created, I think it's a 12-page document. Any of you from the council, can you remember? I think it's 12 pages of notes that Chris produced for us. That then the way he directed me was more or less to sit with that content, prayerfully and otherwise, and then along with the staff to kind of synthesize. Of course, there's way more work than you could get done in a year, and just kind of bring from that a year's worth of work and initiative and proactive activity. And that's when it was like, oh, well, let's do an owners meeting, and let's just roll all that out. So it's not all of it, but it's all that is in kind of our grid right now. So thank you for being a part of that, and we're just going to jump around. I think the other thing that probably needs to be said is, the other thing that occurred to me is, one of the things you don't do on a Vision Weekend is get into some of the nerdy numbers that some of you love and some of you loathe, and so we're going to err to the side of giving you information. In my mind, there's nothing off limits. You can ask any question you want at the end. I'm a thrive on information person. I'm assuming the fact that you're here, you either are two, or you're married to one, or you're with one, and so we're just going to err to that side. So I'm just going to kind of power through and jump around from the SWOT stuff. And the first strength that really came out in this time And by the way, I always went last. So Chris would send us off for 20 minutes and everybody would take notes, and then we'd come back and he would have each one of the staff members present there kind of read through their list, and he just played the role of scribe. I always went last. And frankly, it was delightful to hear that for every one of them, one of the real highlights was the staff culture, which of course I felt the same way. And honestly hasn't always been the case. This kind of strong sense of we like each other, we like working together, we work well together, we have complementary strengths. And I mean, it's for the last couple of years, the conversation that I've been having with the council is like, we just need to prioritize keeping who we have to the much as we can control that. We went from a staff made up of mostly young, kind of new hires to a lot of people who have been here for a while. Doris, I think, is in her 10th year, maybe longer. I should probably know the answer to that. That's why I'm a C- boss. If you don't know Doris, that would make sense. She has a pretty low profile. She leads all of our business. She's in Greece right now on an anniversary trip. The thing I love about Doris is she's overqualified. She manages the budget and finances, and she's inherently a yes person. Like, she's kind and gracious, and I've worked in budget worlds before, as I'm sure you have, where that's just not what you expect. Hannah, believe it or not, is in her, this next Duncan Dine will be your 10th year, right? She's been around for a long time. I could say a lot of things about Hannah. I think the first thing I would say personally is through a rough season, Hannah restored my own confidence in my ability to lead a staff. Hannah and I's strengths and weaknesses are very complementary. We hired Hannah as an administrator, and I think you've all watched her become a pastor in the truest sense of the word. We used to hide when it was guest speakers. I never have liked that. And now it's like, oh, Hannah's speaking? Sweet, I'm coming this week. Hannah's a remarkable leader. Lexi, we hired her as a child, and now she has 2 children of her own and a husband. Actually, when we hired her, she was married, which means when she got married, she was a child. It's one of the most thankless spots in church. It's one of the hardest. If you think about the number of people that she leads and works with. Oh, there's my wife. We should all applaud. She's here. Oh, thank you for that. That is the best. So if you think about the number of people that Lexi manages on a week in, week out basis, it's a average sized church. We hired her as someone who likes kids and is willing to work with kids, and you've all watched her become a really good kids pastor, and there's no doubt in my mind her best days are ahead of her. Gay, she's fierce. It's the best word for gay. And we have the best nursery in the world. I just have no doubt, or at least as good as any. The care that she gives to parents and her team and your team give to parents and their babies, it's so awesome. Several years ago, Gay gave back part of her salary so we could hire some help for her. I don't know if you know, but Gay's in her 70s. I hope I'm like a quarter as productive in this season of life as Gay is right now. So we hired Kristen, and Kristen is, we wish, as a staff, we wish she was around more because she's fun, she makes us laugh, she's crazy, she's just delightful, and she's covering, right now she's doing the maternity leave for Lexi, so she's great. I have this fear that I'm gonna forget somebody, so will you tell me if I do? Leslie, oh man, we might have been sunk. And I'm gonna come back to the music stuff in a little bit, but I've worked with world-class musicians before, which she definitely is. I've never worked with one that is as good at putting together sets and is also just so easy to work with. And frankly, I think the part that's super refreshing about Leslie is she arrives at it so honestly. Like, she doesn't have to pull herself into the spiritual part of it, and I'm not trying to say anything about anybody else, but I'm just trying to say it's very authentic for her in the work that she does. Alyssa, I'm just really thrilled to get to learn about her more. She's a high energy person. We're already learning in the first couple of weeks, there's this, you just kind of learn really quickly, are they a get it done person or not? And she definitely is, and we're so excited for middle school. There were 10 students there this last week, so it's a great starting place, and excited to have her. And who did I miss? Nobody, okay. This one I'm actually more excited to talk about, and I love the staff. The staff spouses. She warned me. Staff spouses. I didn't see this one coming into the SWAT. I was aware of the staff one. What I didn't realize, like we all have hard jobs, and I resist and resent the notion that as pastors or church people we have a harder job than anybody else. They're all unique. This job comes with a lifestyle, and what makes or breaks hires in this field are their spouses. We've seen it more than once, and that's reasonable. This summer, Scott and Hannah went camping with some friends, and by the way, we're not victims. We have vacation. We have good vacation benefits, and I'm not trying to say anything about that, but Scott and Hannah went camping with some friends. You know, you camp on Friday and Saturday night, and the lifestyle that Hannah lives means that you camp on Friday night and you come home on Saturday. That takes a spouse who buys into that. You'll see Gay sitting in the nursery every week. You'll also see Bill sitting right next to her, just working on Sunday. And in church, there's oftentimes a culture where when you hire one person, it's expected that you get the spouse. And we always make it clear that's not what we're doing. And that's not even what I'm trying to articulate. But rather, it's that there's a lifestyle that comes with the work. And what stands out to me is every one of our staff is married to somebody who has an imagination for the lifestyle that comes with that. Jonathan comes in every morning on Sundays at 6 a.m. and helps set up. We'd be okay without him. And he's just sometimes you go is this your job? Because he just loves being there so much. That takes a certain amount of sacrifice. My wife worked a 12-hour shift on Tuesday just as a way of illustration, and then came home and sat down at 7:30 that night. And we sat down with some friends who were just in a place in their marriage, and we sat there and hung out with them for 2 hours. And then last night was Thursday, and then on Wednesday night, I texted her at 5 o'clock, and I was like, hey, we've got some friends who need to talk through some stuff, so when you get home from your 12-hour shift, I'll be sitting there on the patio. And she snuck into her room that night, and then one of them had a question for her, and they went and pulled her out of her pajamas, and she was talking to them in the kitchen. Last night, we had 4 couples over to, ironically, I think, because we're starting this marriage experiment thing with people. There's a lifestyle that comes with this. And so for those of you spouses, thank you, because it really isn't doable work without you, even if we applaud when you're late. But that brings us to what I want to call a threat. A threat that I'm calling staff growth plus lease increases plus rising costs in general, all stuff that we know. What makes it unique for us, I think, is if you think about a football team or a baseball team, sorry for the sports analogy, that drafts really well, what happens is eventually those draft picks have to get paid. And in a non-salary cap world, then either your salary goes up or you let them go. And in the NFL, you just have to keep drafting well. We're kind of in that spot. We don't have myself and a bunch of young, inexperienced staff anymore. We've got this great staff with great experience, and all of whom could work at any church in the country. They're very good at what they do. We have leases just like you have rents and mortgages, and the cost of coffee beans, all that's going up. And so that just brings us into the threat, was what I'm calling it, which is around giving. There's no budget shortfall. We're being very proactive here. We have 6 months emergency and then some in the bank. So the good news is we have runway. The other side of it is some of our historic leaders who have made this place possible in their giving. Some of them have died, some of them have retired, some of them have moved on, some of them just frankly moved. And so there's this, I'm actually really excited about it. Because as I was trying to speak to on Sunday, there's this moment of, will we grow into the kind of place that can support this type of a church and this kind of environment for the next 15 years? So here's numbers. This isn't going to be all about numbers. But some of you like them. Our fiscal year, for those of you who don't know that terminology, our fiscal year is September through August. And so what I gave you there was, what we gave you were the last prior 4 years of giving. And you can see, and this is awesome. And I think if you went back 4 years from that, it's right around the same. We've been at right around $500,000 for quite a while, which is extraordinary. And that represents real car payments and real sacrifice and real invested kingdom tithing. What you see in that bottom number is this year's budget. And where that comes from, and this is, I think, the first time the council's ever done this, is approve a budget that's even greater than the giving. And it comes back to the staff piece. It's a big piece of it. We spent the last 2 years using market research There's something out there called church staffing, which will tell you what do people in positions like this, in churches this size, in this region of the country, what do they get paid? And we've spent a lot of energy arguing in healthy ways and wrestling and trying to figure out, like, how do we create this equitable scale for the staff? And so we've got everybody right now at the 50th percentile, and to do that gets us to that 533 number. That leads us to an opportunity. I think it's an awesome opportunity. It's an opportunity where I learn what it means to be a discipler, and a big piece of that is encouraging generosity. It's a season where we get to encourage those of you who are generous in your giving, and we get to invite those of you who have never explored this side of faith to join us. It's not a coercive one. We have runway. We've been set up by the historic leadership to grow into this. But I think that if we don't get to 600,000 in the next handful of years, we'll be in some real trouble, if we're just being honest. And that's what we're here for. That would be the threat. Which will get us into some opportunities, some more opportunities. This is a gal named Trish Nelson. I'm in a meeting with her monthly through a group of clergy that I'm associated with. She's a pastor. I think she calls herself the Chief Executive Officer. She's super fun and energetic. She's a pastor in Kansas City. When we were there together, Hannah, Leslie, and I, and our spouses in April, they got to finally meet her and interact with her, and her and Hannah hit it off. Well, here's kind of, just, to me, this fun story. At a council meeting, and this kind of speaks into what's the role of the council, as we were having some of this conversation around the threat, one of the ways they challenged me was they're like, Adam, the way you guys talk about giving is like wooden. Like we just all take a nap during that part of this gathering at this point. My words, not theirs. That made sense. It felt fair. So the next morning, we meet together at 8:30 every morning real quickly so that we don't interrupt each other through the day, because some of us are type A and like our block schedules. It works really well for us, and I was sharing this story with them of like, hey, yeah, we've got work to do, and we've kind of explored that a little bit, and it just so happened that afternoon, Hannah had scheduled a meeting with Trish without anything in particular in mind, I don't think, and somehow this came up, and Trish said, oh, here's this thing that we started doing a few years ago, and it's been huge for our people because it's helped them understand what we're doing. She said, we before we ever talk about offering, we always tie it back to here's something that money goes to. Whether that's goldfish crackers or something for the poor, or whatever that is, we always tie it back. And this is, for me, just one of those neat opportunities because, as you've noticed, hopefully, Hannah's done that every week ever since. It's another opportunity which seems kind of minor, but it could be major, transaction fees. One of the things we know about giving is it's almost never spontaneous. So I remember the first time we shut down the week of the 4th of July, I was back in Billings and I was talking to a friend who worked at Harvest and told him that we shut down for the 4th of July, and he goes, man, that must cost you some money. What we learned is it doesn't. Those of you who give, and people who don't. But where there's the opportunity then is we spent $13,000 this year on transaction fees. So, if you do the ACH direct to bank account, that's 30 cents. If you do bill pay, it's free. If you drop a check in the box, it's free. If you use the same service that we use in all of our transactions every day, then they take the same percentage. And Doris has been going like, could we just please help givers who don't actually even know that? We actually have people on our staff who didn't realize that. So maybe we don't need to get to 600, maybe we need to get to 587. Anyway, it's just a neat opportunity, I think. Since we're in numbers, let's talk attendance, because this one I think is super fun, and we wouldn't have said this a year ago. I'm going to inundate you with some numbers here. So I put fiscal year 2018-19 up there because that would have been the last year completely unaffected by COVID. Imagine a world where we'd never heard of COVID. That was that year. Our average Sunday attendance that year was 392. Starting then in September of 19 through March of 2020, our average was 418. By the way, here's a fun little anecdote. If we go back to that 2018-2019 average number, that summer, I just looked back at this, that summer, June through August, our average attendance was 300. This summer, our average attendance was 294. It's kind of fun. But then you start seeing the fall off. You see what happened afterwards, and then I gave you some percentages as we're kind of climbing back. We grew by 29%, and then 17%, and then 3%. And there was a lot happening, if we're being honest. Like, I was changing a lot, the staff was changing a lot, Sunday was changing a lot. There's a lot of good churches in town. There's more good churches in town than there were probably 10 years ago. There's a lot of dynamics. This last year, which we just closed, Technically, we grew by 4%. I'm going to argue we grew by like 8 or 9. And the reason I say that is because you may not recall that in August 1 of 2024, we shut down the live feed. And the live feed was, on any given week, between 3 and 8% of our attendance. So I think last year actually is better than it looks just there. Then watch this. This, I think, is where I'm really excited. And we're just excited to see what's happening this fall. If you just take the year 2025, the calendar year, we're up 10%. If you take this last summer, year over year, we're 12.5. And this isn't all about numbers. In fact, I think part of what that 12.5 represents is you all, I know it because I see it. You've worked really hard at like making Sunday a part of your rhythm. I think collectively, we all take Sundays more seriously than we used to. The way I think about COVID is we planted a church, and I planted a church, not that I did it, but I'll take responsibility for this. And more or less the message was, church isn't really that important, but we're gonna be so good at it, you'll come anyway. And I think what happened is our culture just cashed that check during COVID. They just called us on, like, you told us this wasn't very important. So I think we're growing, but I think we're not just growing numerically, we're growing in depth of faith because there is a higher percentage of people showing up. This last Sunday, and this is anything but a trend, but year over year, the first Sunday in September, we were up 28%. Super fun. Which brings me to this. This is for me, the part of this gathering I've been most excited about. This solid mixture of old and new, and I'm not talking about age. Raise your hand if you were here before COVID, would you? And if you want to turn around and look, you sure can. And now raise your hand if you've been here since COVID. That is so awesome. Like, it's this really neat blend of new and old. We'll get to it. It's part of why we've moved to a rotating council. I think if we're talking strengths, though, one of the things that would be easy to take for granted would be hospitality. This has been a vision and a value since before we ever existed. This is where Hannah and I work so well together because she doesn't always feel the need to do vision, but she's great at taking vision and making it happen. When Chris was here in October, and some of you have heard me tell this story, but it bears repeating, and Brad was here in February, unbeknownst to each other, they both came up to me after the first gathering and said, everything you guys do is about hospitality. I remember Chris was like, the mint's in the bathroom. And then Brad, he actually took those coloring boards home and his church does them now. And we can have the value of hospitality, but we can't execute it without you. Without your buy-in with your friends, without it not being embarrassed that this is your church, without showing up to vacuum carpets and run slides and run sound and play in the band and tear down and all the things. Like that we have such a high reputation and a strength of hospitality, that says way more about you all than it does the staff. But that brings to an opportunity, what you've heard us talk about. We've tried to hold some of these back to not just ruin this gathering, but this one we couldn't. One of the things that came up in that SWOT analysis that I don't think any of us had our finger on before was the 1045 has problems. And the problems are problems we give it. So the environment at about 10 minutes to 9 is awesome. And the environment at about 10:05 is awesome. There's this socializing and hospitality and people hanging out, and it's so fun. And the environment at about 10:50, when all the 10:45 people show up for church, is pretty fun. By the way, we could start that service at 4, and you'd still be there at 4:05. Like I just know it. And then what happens when it's over? Like, we unplug lights and we unplug sound, and who could blame them? Like, we've got volunteer sound people and band people and staff who aren't volunteer, and we all just kind of want to be done and go home. So we gave this pitch, like, hey, what if we could build a teardown team, then we could just let the thing lie dormant for 10 minutes. And I think we could make the 1045 this growth engine of community and connection and relationship. There's 23 of you that are doing that. Several, I think there's 4 families. It's always hard to know when it's an individual or a couple, but there's 4 people who are like regular 9 o'clock people who are like, well, once a month I'll do the 1045 just to kind of meet some of the 1045 people. We're really excited about that, and I think it's a big opportunity this year. It seems small, but if we're going to be a church that says, like, we don't know that we want to own a building, And historically, we've adopted the Blackfoot model that says we're not going to allow excellence to sabotage culture or success to sabotage culture. Then like having hospitable environments in a room that's already too full is going to be really important. That brings us to a threat, and that's communication. The council's been challenging me on this for a while. I think you've probably seen it. We're just not good at promoting what we do. We've had this sense for a while that we do a lot of stuff, but we don't talk about it very well. My son this summer, I was talking about this, and Chase, who goes in Butte, I didn't ask his permission, but I don't think he'll care. If he does, it's too late. He said, so have you ever thought about like hiring somebody that just like goes around town and goes to events and invites people to church? And I was like, no. He's like, why not? And I said, because we all stink at self-promotion, and that's not, I don't really want to do that. I was like, where does that come from? And he said, oh, there's this guy at this church in Butte that does that. Like, I'm pretty sure he's just hired to just show up at all the college things and invite us to church. And I said, does it work? And he goes, no, actually, come to think of it, it's really annoying. We have worked really hard on what we think is a strategy and a plan, and Hannah's going to speak to all of that.
All right, I get 5 minutes to talk about communication. So when I think about communication, there's 3 questions that come to mind. What's happening around Narrate? How do I get involved? And where do I find that information? And I think the answer kind of lies in clear, frequent communication that you can find really easily. So there's 4 digital forms of our communication strategy that I'm going to talk about, and then 4 in-person on a Sunday morning communication strategies. I'm just going to run through all of them. So the first digital communication strategy is our Narrate-wide email list that goes out. I think we're really getting better at putting words and a cool image to all of the events, scattering events, updates, Sunday morning blurbs, and sending those out. So in August of 2024, we sent out 5 Narrate-wide emails. Last August 2025, we sent out 16. So I think we're just trying to put that information in front of you more, not to like overwhelm your inbox, but to for you to know like where you can find that information when you need it. So the second one is our social media. So we do have, if you don't know, we have a Facebook and an Instagram, and our goal there is not to become Instagram famous. I run that account, it's not happening, but I think it's really just to meet you where you're at and to get our followers information when they're online looking at those pages. So anything that gets emailed out also gets posted to the Facebook and the Instagram accounts. And then there's also like fun visual stuff, like the band sends me a picture after every rehearsal or a cool video, or the Duncan Dine photos all got posted, or scattering pictures. Those all get posted on those accounts as well. This is another great way just to just learn what's happening or see some images. In August of 2024, we did 11 social media posts. Last August, we did 22. So again, we're not even at 1 on average per day of the month. So we're not trying to overwhelm you or take over your feed, just want you to know that that information is there when you need it. The third one is the podcast. Leslie does a really great job of making sure the podcast is updated on a really regular schedule. So the Sunday morning message is posted the same Sunday by 5 o'clock. And then our Beyond Sunday series is posted every Friday at noon. And if you catch the first, minute or 2 of this Sunday message, there's a little blurb or a little information about an upcoming event. And then if you look at those Beyond Sunday podcast episodes, there's like interviews or conversations with you or other people. And then also sometimes there's a whole podcast about like an event coming up. So we did one about Dine and Dunk. We did one about this meeting. That's another great way just to kind of stay informed as to what's happening. The 4th digital communication strategy is, why am I blanking on it? The website. So Leslie's doing a really great job at just kind of streamlining and making that a lot more clear. It's a lot more like static than our social media pages, but you can always get on there and just maybe find a link or find out where you can find the information that you need. So that's our 4 digital communication strategies. Our in-person on Sunday morning strategies. You might have noticed if you get there 10 to 15 minutes early, maybe not if you go to 10:45, you missed the announcement loop. So Adam's doing a really good job at creating a visual slide or an image with information on all of the events, book groups, scattering events, everything that's like coming up. That's in an announcement loop on the slides before the 9 and the 10:45 gatherings. There's also a second thing that we're doing. We've started, when the band comes up and does their preview song, we call it, there's going to be one slide that's just up behind them while they're doing that song, and that highlights, like it highlighted our generosity groups, it highlighted this meeting, so just another way to kind of notice what's coming up. The third one's a little bit obvious, but we kind of have to name it. It's our Gather Scatter announcement about 20 minutes into the gathering. We talk about what's coming up, scattering events, students, all that kind of stuff. And then there's always someone in the lobby afterwards with the sign-up sheets. They could help you if you have questions, or you can always grab me after the gathering too. So that's another way to learn what's coming up. And then the last in-person strategy, it's a bit of a hybrid. It's those verse cards that we've started. So on the back is the memory verse, and then on the front there's a little QR code that takes you to the what to expect on a Sunday morning video that's hosted on our YouTube page. So that's just another place that the podcast audio files also get posted. So just another thing you should be aware of. Okay, thanks.
Giddy up. Thank you. Strengths. Let's get back to that. Music. It's kind of all you have to say, right? So when we started, when Lenny and I came here and he started the band, we were told then, and I'm sure it's still the same, that the principle of church planning is if you have great music and great preaching, then you'll be okay. And so knowing that the preaching would be average, I thought we've got to have really good music and average preaching. And Lenny accomplished that with a lot of your all's help who were a part of that band. Kate showed up and, if anything, raised the bar on that. Tommy came, and I think Tommy was perfect for those quiet, dialed-down COVID months. I think stylistically that lent itself really well to where we were. And then, of course, as we emerged out of that, the fit wasn't great for him or his family, and quite frankly for us. And then we moved out of that season. We hired a young gal named Avery, and it's on me. We threw way too much at her too early. I can look back now and see that part of what was driving me, at the risk of justifying what frankly amounted to a bad hire for her and for us, what happened there was somewhere around when I turned 40, I became aware of the fact that the way I was trained to do ministry is the outlier, it's the exception. I'd always assumed it was normative, but like pastors who like work office hours and answer emails and schedule meetings, I'd put our meeting schedule up against any church in the country, and I mean that like literally, not even on a per capita level. Like the way that we were taught to do church, I was really proud of that. And so I had this desire, like I want to give that away to the next generation. And so that's what really drove me to drive, like, let's go hire somebody very young. In hindsight, we have that. We have a young staff, and Gay's going to live to 150. So we've got several leaders, many of whom I think are called to the work, many of whom could work for any church in the country, who will be doing this long after I'm done. And so it is this neat poetic justice thing for me of like, God did do that. It just wasn't my way, which tends to be how things go in all of our lives. Then Justin came and he led, and he did a great job. I think we have to name, though, that from the band, you had this high bar, and there was several years there where like music wasn't at your standards. It wasn't at our standards. And yet I can think of one person who walked away in that season, and that's fine. I'm not trying to denigrate them at all. So thankful for those of you who just like persisted and led. Some of you did a lot of leading and things like Christmas Eve, and you rotated Sundays, and you just held it for us. And then Justin relieved you a little bit of that and did a great job. And then Dave, when he told me he was leaving, that could have been like the end of us, genuinely, just to be back in that spot. And I'll never forget sending Leslie a text and going like, hey, so there's this job opening, and I don't in a million years think you're interested, but if you are. And then she quickly got back and she's like, I kind of am. And then I said something to her I would have never said as little as a couple years ago. I said, if you don't feel called to this, let's not talk. I think she is. I think you all have seen it. I think the reality is part of why our growth numbers are what they are is our music is great again. And so thank you, band, and thank you, Leslie, for all the hard work that you've put into that. It's so refreshing for us as a staff because we're like hitting on every cylinder again. Scattering is a strength, and like hospitality, we could take this one for granted very easily, but we shouldn't. It's at the core of who we are. It's at the core of who we wanted to be, and this is a great example, again, of Hannah's leadership, where she's taken a vision and an idea, and she's just made it bloom. Our connections with community players from Habitat, we've had a connection with the city for a long time. We have more opportunity than we've ever had. The slate of scattering that we have this year is super fun. Everything from tag work to trail work to helping build homes at Habitat to all kinds of stuff with Brad. It's awesome. And not to mention that through Ales for Trails and you all volunteering at that event, we've given over $100,000 to trails in this region in less than 12 months. So fun. I want to talk about the strength that is C4SO. Some of you may remember sometime you wouldn't have known it then, but sometime in February of 2023, I came to the council and I said, hey guys, I think I need to move. And hey guys and woman, I think I need to move my credentials to C4SO, or at least I'd like you to consider it. It was a very foreign thought. Nobody even, the only thing people knew about Anglicanism was that they were the bad guys in their US history class. Nobody knew anything. What I'd said to them was, I need a place that I'm sent from. I have always had that. I had it in Billings from Fred. I had it in Helena from Brian and Vern and Fred, and then for a while, George Fox. I thought I could do without it, and I couldn't. So I asked for this professional community, and they respected that. They took a chance. I think they saw things that I never saw, but I just want to show you this map at the risk of making this about myself. That map represents people who I talk to, if not monthly, maybe more, maybe a little bit less. I don't know why I'm emotional. And the staff will tell you, those are world-class leaders. The network that we've been able to build is a huge piece of the strength. And what I want to show you is, what I didn't see was just all the value add that would come with that, not just for me. So Greg was the first one, you can ask him about this, he was the first one to bring to my attention a podcast that C4SO had put out where they outlined their mandatory training around anybody who works with somebody less than 18 as it relates to child safety and sexual abuse and all of those things. We got that directly from them. And in fact, last fall we went to reapply for the insurance that we've had every year for 15 years, and they said, oh yeah, but we need to see your sexual abuse prevention program. We only had one because these guys were a step ahead of us. I hope that doesn't mean that we were irresponsible for it. That's not what I'm trying to say, but just we're moving into this world where some of those options aren't going to be there if you don't have those technical things in place. I go through mandatory training by the nature of my ordination through C4SO. So if you're not familiar, I am a missionary clergy with C4SO, meaning that means nothing for Narrate necessarily, but I'm under a bishop. I'm under their authority. They have, he could call me on stuff. There's all kinds of mandatory trainings that I'm a part of. One is this sexual harassment and abuse training. The SWAT, I'm just powering through just to try to illustrate a point here. The SWAT, this is directly from these relationships. We're working right now really hard on our bylaws. It might not surprise you to know that a bunch of Montanans who planted a church didn't like authority. And our bylaws reflect that. And for good reason, because the people who planted us were burned by some of these things. And so they're helping us clean that up. Family Sundays, this is something that we learned from them. This thing, I'm going to throw it through the wall. The rotating council, which was such a fun process, so positive. We had so many great applicants. That's something we learned from them. Alpha, we're starting one next week where you take brand new Christians and people who used to be Christians and people who think they might want to be a Christian, and you sit in this space and have these really safe, open dialogues for several weeks. That's something, they didn't start Alpha, we learned it from them. The Alpha premarital work, we did one of these classes for the first time last winter. I think we had 8 couples. It was a blast. And I didn't even think I did a very good job at it, but the couples had a blast. And I've never been good at premarital counseling and knowing what to do there. And now we have this whole system that they provide. There's this free assessment that they take. There's these classes they watch online. And then we just get together and talk about the class that they watched. Church planning. We've had an imagination from this from the very beginning. We're a church planted by a church that was planted. We've always wanted to do this. I would argue we have the money to do this. The hard hardest part about church planning is it's hard to find qualified people to do it. Teresa and I go to DC in a couple of weeks where we're going to sit with, I think, 11 other churches from this network who just have this huge imagination for church planning, and we just get to listen to these like world-class leaders talk about how they're pursuing this and what exactly this is going to look like, and we just get to be in the room. Now, we have a staff goal-setting process and an evaluation process. We've never been good at this like an annual, somewhat objective evaluation. We have one of those now from them. Leslie, I overheard her in my office yesterday. She's a part of a national a group of people scattered all over the country, these worship leaders from all these different churches who get together monthly. Leslie has something similar with kids. This one I'm really excited about selfishly because, so AJ Sherrill, so you know John Mark Comer, when he was practicing when he was leading Bridgetown Church in Portland, when he resigned, he called a guy named AJ Sherrill to come take his job. AJ replaced Rob Bell at Mars Hill. He went to New York. He's now at a church in South Carolina. AJ said no. I'm saying that to say AJ's kind of a big deal and a great leader. He's at this C4SO church in South Carolina. So John Mark reached out to him recently and said, hey, the next step of practicing the way in this whole program is we want to create these pastor cohorts where 4 or 5 churches come together and they get together 4 times over a couple years and they get together every month on Zoom. And really the conversation is, how do we not just measure success by attendance and dollars, but by a church's ability to really integrate the spiritual practices into the lives of their people? We got an invite to be a part of that crew. It's a big deal. Brings me to this other idea, the warden. So a warden historically is somebody in an old church where it's the person other than the pastor that had the keys. And the idea was that if the pastor got hit by a bus or did something nefarious, somebody had the ability to show up and open the doors and let things happen. One of the things that we've learned from these guys is the value of a warden is it gives us a council member who helps know and lead the council, who represents the council to you all, to the church, and also who, if I get hit by a bus or something else, doesn't take over, but along with the assistant warden or the junior warden, we're so bad at technical language, they show up in the offices and they look at Hannah and Leslie and the rest of the staff and they go like, how can we help? What are we gonna do? And so I've asked Brian Anderson to be the warden for the first year, and Jolynn to be the first assistant warden. So that means now whenever you see them walking around Narrate, you can call him warden and her junior warden. And Brian's going to come up here and speak to you for just a few moments about all of that. Shall I say Warden Brian's going to come on up here?
I thought we were looking for a new word. Well, thanks. Yeah, if we haven't met, my name is Brian. Can you guys hear me? I need to hold a little closer. My name is Brian Anderson, and I've had the privilege and opportunity to be on the council since 2016. So I'll be rotating off next year. It'll be a good 10-year run. It's been an awesome opportunity. Adam asked that I just kind of spend a little time talking about kind of the culture of Narrate's council. But first, just kind of by a show of hands, who thinks that Narrate's council is kind of a big mystery? All right, I was afraid of that. Well, you might leave disappointed because after we peek behind the curtain, I think you're going to realize that there wasn't a whole lot to see. But
you got to eat the mic.
What's that?
You got to eat the mic.
I got to eat it. All right, is this better? Comfortable. I've got some notes so I don't go over here. I know we're on a short time period. Let me just real quick talk about who's on council. So as I'm looking around here, Greg Ross, he's on council. If you could just raise your hand for everybody. Jolynn, the assistant warden. Jolynn. Marla Gates, I saw her. She is one of the newest members of our council who was just kind of brought on during this last rotation. Chris, is Chris here?
I don't think so.
Chris isn't here, that's all right. And then we've got Daryl Stordahl.
He's not
Daryl.
here. He's
Daryl
sick.
Not here. Okay.
He's sick and Chris has 4 kids.
Oh, shucks. And Adam is a permanent member of the council. So just real quick, Jody. Is Jody here? Thanks. I did the thing Adam didn't do. That's why you should be scared if I get the keys to anything around here. Yes, Jody, thanks. So just real quickly, as far as the rotating council, so Kyle Ball and Steve Schroeder have been longtime members of the council. They just rotated off. and we're so grateful. We were very sad to lose them. It's going to be a big hole to fill, but we're excited this next month. We meet about once a month, the council does, and this next month's meeting will be our first meeting with Marla and Chris. So we're looking forward to getting to know them and just kind of getting some of their input. So getting back to just a little bit of the council, or the culture of the council, I would say that the culture of the council is really one that is like a backstage hand. We have always, I think, just come to the table with the idea that we have the stars on stage that Adam just talked about. We have just an incredible staff here, and our job is to support them and get out of their way. So we've always kind of seen ourselves as advisors and counselors, not so much directors. So I'll just kind of talk about, what we do to hopefully provide some more context to kind of how our meetings are run and the things that we're involved with. So the things that we do, we're very involved in the budget process. So once a year we go through and we set and approve a budget. Each week we get updates on what the weekly giving was, and then each month we get updates on what the income and expenses were for Narrate. And of course it's our responsibility to review those numbers and just see how they line out with the budget that we've set. As I've said, counseling and advising, that's kind of our biggest role. Adam will bring an agenda to us each month, and he's looking for feedback from us. So we've just got so many great people on council from so many different backgrounds, people in private business, government, people with experience on boards and nonprofits. And so really it is an opportunity to just provide feedback and really just see, how Narrate's got a mission, right? And we just look to see, are there risks associated with these new ideas or plans, and how do they line out with Narrate's mission? One of the things that we also try to do is, we're all friends of other people that go to Narrate, and so when we hear viewpoints from people that may not have, a seat at these council meetings, it's an opportunity for us to bring different thoughts and perspectives from owners that Narrate to these meetings. What we don't do, we're not involved in setting the kind of theological tone or tenor of Narrate. That's just not our role. We don't make or create the vision for Narrate. I mean, that's really left up to Adam and the staff to kind of drive the vision of Narrate. We don't manage day-to-day operations of anything. We don't get involved in day-to-day, financial matters, things like that. One of the other things that I miss that we are really involved with on the council is the hiring or departure of employees. So anytime we have the opportunity to hire somebody, we're involved typically in looking at the candidates and then doing interviews of those candidates. Likewise, when somebody leaves, we like to be involved in that process and be there for exit interviews or other things that may provide opportunities for us to learn. I know we're going to have a Q&A, so if I'm missing anything, please feel free to ask. I think, kind of just back to the culture, there's a saying, you can believe in God alone, but you can't follow God alone. And I think, our cultures, we all really buy into that idea that our faith is best expressed in a community of believers. And to the extent that we can support, the owners and the staff, that's really what we're looking to do. As far as anything that's changed, I mean, over the last couple of years, as Adam kind of alluded to, there's been a lot of new conversation about C4SO, and we've learned a lot about ancient faith and the Anglican faith and denomination specifically. And I guess I would just say, as far as a big update or maybe what's changed over the last couple of years is, if you asked me 5 years ago, after a normal council meeting, like what the plan was, if something were to happen to Adam, if he was to go somewhere else, what the plan was for Narrate, I would say we really don't have a backup plan. I mean, Adam's kind of our plan. And at this point, I think it's been really fun for us to say that with Adam and the staff, we're developing an imagination to see what Narrate could look like down the road, 15, 20 years without Adam. Just this idea that Narrate can live past some of the leaders that we've got. So I think I'll kind of wrap it up, wait for some Q&A. Take it easy on me if you do, and thanks for the time.
Thanks, Brian.
We can turn that off.
No, I think Leslie will do that. Thanks. It's going to be so fun to have Brian. So I think I probably might have missed, and the assumption is that then Jolynn moves into the warden role after a year, and then we'll name a new junior warden from the existing council. Global scattering, I'm very excited about this. I think a year from now we'll have real plans in place. And we remember Teresa was instrumental in starting, and so were you, in starting an organization called Families with Heart, and that just kind of fell apart from life and COVID. And she's got wheels moving, maybe a trip to the South coming soon. Russ Hill, who you may or may not have met, has a long history, him and his wife Michelle, in the mission space, and they're kind of clicking and comparing notes, and they're both doing some recon, and I'm really excited that I think we'll be back in that space relatively soon. The student director, I was taught that the best hires are always going to be when you hire somebody who's volunteered their way into a role, and I mean that, like Alyssa's face is in the book when you go looking for that. The amount of energy and excellence that her and her husband Jake have given to students over these last couple of years with almost no support, very little fanfare, and just slogging it out. It's just, I'm so excited. And I'll give Brian credit for the fact that we hired her. He's the one that over a year ago brought to the council, like, hey, maybe if we can't find it in the budget, we just need to give ourselves a grant from our own reserves and just go into deficit to hire a student person. And we kind of paused that conversation by saying, okay, well, what if we just all commit to praying regularly for a year to see what happens? And it was about halfway through that year where we started to go we have someone right here. And we're very excited to have you, Alyssa, and Jake. We didn't hire you, but you're such a great spouse. And by the way, almost every one of our spouses is married to a 9. For those of you, or every one of our staff is married to a 9, which is kind of this fun thing for those of you Enneagram nerds, and I think is what makes their bringing their life into the lifestyle that comes with this work. One of the things, and this is the one that feels most raw to me, and frankly, maybe the one that I have the most energy for right now, is the kids-specific experiences. If you were at Dunkin' Dine, that put the whole thing on display. Because you saw a beach full of young families with little kids having a great time and getting to socialize because it was a kid-safe space. And that just put an exclamation point for me next to the fact that we've got a lot of work to do. Our facilities give us challenges there, but frankly, we've got this awesome group of young families or families with young kids. We've also got this growing group of old people like me who suddenly are empty nesters. And I think those two things could lead to some really fun things. It's on the agenda for management team next week. It's on the agenda for council in October. This is more in that we've identified the opportunity, we've got work to do, but we do have a couple low-hanging fruit. One is Leslie and Lexi have developed a relationship with our friends next door, Aspen, who do some of the most heroic work in Helena, and have already confirmed that they'll let us use that space to do kids-specific stuff on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday and that second service, so that's a start. The other one that we're really excited about, and you can nerd out with Leslie on this one for a long time, is last year we thought of it too late, but it struck us sometime in December, wait a minute, the district canceled Christmas programs. We should have put kids on the stage at Christmas Eve. That would have just been a no-brainer. It was too late when we thought of it. I think they might be doing programs this year. I'm not sure, but we're bringing kids and family choir back to Christmas Eve. And where I'm excited about this, and this just speaks to Leslie's leadership, is I'm just going to use an example. No pressure, Brandon. But here's the part that's exciting. Is Jody's in the band this year. And that would mean that if him and Austin and Bo and Maggie want to spend the whole day with Jody, she might not want them to spend the day with her at Christmas Eve at the Civic Center. But Brandon and Maggie and Austin and Bo, I don't know, all three of them, or you can put Bo in the nursery and Brandon and Austin and Maggie, they can go sing in the choir both services and be a part of the whole thing. That's an example of the type of things that we're trying to get at. We get Family Sunday. That's really not that. I think Family Sunday has its place, and I think its place is, and I've been reminded by this myself recently, the idea that was given to me was, Adam, we think it's important to give kids environments periodically where the environment doesn't craft itself for them. where it's just like, come be in this space with us, and you're not going to understand a lot of it, and that's okay, but we want to see you worship, and you get to see us worship. Like, that's different than what we're talking about as it relates to something like the kids and family choir, where should you want to, with your kid or your grandkid, you can be in the choir, but not only can you be in the choir, you can be a part of the kind of behind the scenes for a few hours on Christmas Eve, and thus just more space where we can blend those things together. We're pumped about that. With that, sweet, we're on time. I promise we will not go any later than a quarter after. Hannah bought a lot of beverages, so you're going to have to be here for a while. But I'm going to ask Hannah and Brian and Jolene to come up here, and we're just going to create some space to allow you to ask whatever questions you have. You can ask them of me. You can direct your question to whoever you'd like, and then we'll go 15, no more than 20 minutes on this, and then we'll wrap it up and hang out and socialize in other ways. Do you mind grabbing that one? I don't know which seat to take. And then, oh yeah, you've got a mic. Actually, maybe you two should come down here since we have this.
Sounds good.
I don't know if you want that or not.
It's like a hot potato.
Let's see here. So now you've got the warden and the junior warden on the spot. Let's go. All right. So I'll try to repeat your question. I don't know what method we use here, but anybody have any questions?
Looks like we covered it. So
Connie?
I have two, actually.
It's only one per person, Connie. As long as it ends with a punctuation of a question mark.
Number one, what is your vehicle for getting input from your congregants? That's number one. And number two, if I understood the numbers that you put up there, the 533 is what you pay out. Is that correct? I'd kind of like to know what comes in. And you may not.
Oh, no, that's what comes in. Sorry. I mean, well, okay. I think I know what you're asking.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Jolene answer it.
There we go. So looking back at the past budget years, the council's done just a really good job of managing what our expenditures are within what we anticipate the giving to be. So the past few years, we've had more giving than we've had expenditures. And sometimes at the end of the year, that might be a gift somewhere, that might be put in an investment account. And then we just went through budgeting the last couple of council meetings for the upcoming year, because the new financial year starts 9/1 for our church. So, it is a little bit of using your crystal ball, but Doris has a great crystal ball. It's amazing looking back at the numbers, and Doris, as she gives us updates throughout the year, just seeing how spot on she is. So she helps us, and we have an anticipation of what giving is going to be for the upcoming fiscal year, create that as a budget, and then do all the expenditures budgeted based on that. So we budget to cover all of our expenses. And this was, I think Adam said, the first year where we have a little bit of a shortfall. It was
Not in the year, but we're projecting a bigger one than we had giving the year before.
Yeah, so very minor, and we thought that was an important investment, especially to bring on Alyssa onto the staff.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Connie?
Well, so what is the deficit? What does that mean as far as?
There isn't one as of now, but for the budget for this year, we anticipate that our expenditures might be a little bit more than the giving for the upcoming year. I think it was, I want to say less than $5,000.
It was, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe $3,000.
Before Doris left for Greece, it looked like this year we would come, I didn't mean to imply that she was going to spend anything there. It looked like we would close this year 7,000 in the black. So we've never had a red, or I don't know, is it black or green? We've never had a red year in our history. And as far as your first question, I mean, I think this is a part of that. I'm proud of the fact that save Alyssa, but that's just because we haven't met yet and it's on my yellow pad. Every one of our staff has their calendars on the website. I mean, I think we try to make ourselves available and listen and be relational, but we also have this high value for go to the source. We've worked really hard to not have a gossipy back channel kind of culture. So we've worked really hard to say, like, go talk to him, go talk to him. So I would love to know what ideas you have there, but I think I'd like to think we're as available to people as we could possibly be.
There's a formal way. How do you get information from the constituents? But
Oh, sure. I mean, like I said, I do 20 meetings a week, and Hannah, I mean, I think we're getting it. There's always ways to do that more, but I also think, like, if there's someone that wants to be heard, then we've failed to convey all the different ways that they could find time with us. Thank you.
We're
Yeah.
mostly summer attenders.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So
Hi.
Hi. And so I don't know what C4SO means.
Churches for the Sake of Others.
Okay.
It's a diocese within the Anglican Church of North
Right,
America.
and I knew that had
Yeah.
happened, but I just didn't know what the name was.
And to clarify, like, we're not a C4SO church. I'm a C4SO clergy.
Okay.
We're not connected. It's very confusing and speaks to how awesome C4SO is that they're doing that.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, yeah, Betsy.
So I know one of the threats earlier mentioned like leasing and cost of space. I know we've talked several times about having the commitment of being on the Grand Street and utilizing the space, but like, is there a certain threshold or a tipping point where we need to consider either a different space or a third service or
Right.
some of those other options? Like, has that been part of that long-term discussion as far as like, what is a contingency if something happens there?
I'd love to hear you two. I'll be really quick. I think historically as a staff and a council, we've always exhausted what is plan B. What else could we pivot to? So from my perspective, we're always open to that other thing and just it's never happened. Feel no pressure to agree.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, we've evaluated a lot of different options over the years as far as space goes, and so far we just haven't reached that tipping point. As far as the lease increases, we don't see that as being a tipping point, at least what we're looking at right now, or what could potentially happen. So a threat, but not in the way that it's caused us to actively seek something for Plan B right now.
And I still love that our lease goes to that public theater.
Karen, she's got inside information, so
I'm
I'm
just
scared
asking you a
of
question.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
When did we switch from 3 to 2, and what's max capacity?
We were trying to remember that today. I can't remember if we switched in the fall of 17 or 18 from 3 to 2. And max capacity in the Grand Street is 198?
Yeah, I think it's around 200.
Yeah. And let's all, yeah, go, sorry. Does that answer that?
Kind of tied in with that. What I was originally going to say is I don't have a question. I have a huge thank you for the transparency and the openness here. And that kind of goes back to kind of the question of when we went from 3 services to 2 services. I think that it's helpful to have this kind of conversation so we can share information to people who are, what's this Narrate thing all about?
Sure.
Because there was a lot of unknowns, and it's very rare for a church to say, we're only gonna, you can go somewhere else. We're going to only have 2 services, and if you don't like it, go somewhere else. So, thank you for this meeting and transparency.
Thanks. Thanks, Carol. Ron?
We're gonna have this kind of meeting more frequently than once a year, because the reason I'm asking is you got things like this possible vision for church planting, and it just seems like I'd like to know more about that
Yeah.
when you get into that a little further, and then also this practicing the way that your
Mhm.
cohort that you are joining. I mean, and then how are you gonna get the spiritual practices out to the church?
Right.
So are we gonna get updates from
Yeah.
the stage, or are we gonna have these kind of conversations where we can really mix it up?
Well, per our soon-to-be legal bylaws, we have to do this annually. And yeah, I think, I appreciate that, Ron, and I think it's good for us to be reaffirmed that the interest is there. I think one of the awkward things about this work is you all have busy lives and busy careers and pressing things, and it's not lost on us that you volunteer to help us do our job. So it's sometimes hard to mediate that line between like asking too much of your time and respecting you by giving you the information. So it's helpful. The practices stuff, I don't know, that's what we're going for. I delight in the fact that we're going to be one into it before we start the conversation, and thus we'll have a point of reference, because this series would be part of that series. Annie?
Is there a reason we don't have like a church events calendar like a lot of churches do, where it's like posted on our website and here's all the things for all the different age groups and interests?
Well, we have the email. Hannah started sending out that monthly email.
I did. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
So on the first of each month, I'm going to just send out a huge email that has it broken down week by week, all of the recurring events, student groups, book groups, women's fellowship things. So once a month, that'll come out just with this huge snapshot of everything that's happening by week. And there'll be like date, time, location, and a contact person that you can ask or email if you have more questions. So we've started doing that.
And Leslie's up in our game. I mean, these guys, Hannah and Leslie met with Jake, who's the Narrate guy who's also in communications as a career, and he gave them a great line, and that was, communication will take as much time as you give it. So we're trying to find this balance between communication isn't like, we don't have a full-time web designer or programmer, so trying to find a balance between, I'm an art snob, I hate bad art, and combined with how do we get the information out there. So, but some of that, I mean, I'd love to hear more what you're picturing with the website there, because I know Leslie's been cranking on that and trying to interface all those things.
Were you volunteering,
I think she was volunteering her husband, who's raising his hand next to her. Okay, Johnny.
I guess this is for Hannah. Are we using any metrics to know that, like, the communication methods that you're using are actually effective versus annoying?
I mean, I think you have to tell me if it's annoying or overwhelming or helpful. I mean, you can get into like, we use MailChimp for email, so you can get into like how many emails we're sending, how many people are opening them, how often are they being opened. You know, there's all of that stuff on Facebook and Instagram, all of those metrics. I really just don't have the like capacity to completely dive into all of those like at this moment. Like we've just started this, so I think we need to get a few months out and then we can look at some of those metrics and numbers and just see like, is this helpful, is this not, are people looking at this, are they not? Because we've really just kind of started this summer.
I get the unsubscribe emails, and they're always people that I'm like, oh, it's been 10 years. So when you hit unsubscribe, Johnny, then you've sent a message.
But I think this is why like something like this is important, because you can tell me like, man, you're sending a lot of dang emails, stop. Or, you know, like, hey, I want to learn more about this, push out more. So like, I think feedback is helpful. I'm not like the best at going into the backside of these websites and looking at all the numbers. It's like, I can't do it, it's too much for me.
Yeah.
So to follow up, I want to be clear that the reason I'm asking about metrics is because like, it's one thing for me to tell you that I don't like 16 emails in a month. And it's another thing for the data to back that up. Right?
Sure.
I don't want to be like, I'm not looking for a vocal minority to rule.
Wow.
That's a good point. Yeah, we just don't have that right now because we've just started really being intentional about a communication strategy. Like before July of this year, it's just really been kind of hit and miss. And so we're only about 2 months into how do we be really intentional with this. So I think that data will come when we've got several months of data we can look back at.
Maybe you can help us read the metrics.
That would be lovely.
5 or 6 more minutes. Anybody has anything else? Do you like call it like a wrestling match? One. Anybody?
I would love to compliment that. I feel like the communication has increased and you guys' transparency is there. And like from a receptiveness conversation, I feel like there's some exponential growth happening there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys hear, but she was just sending us compliments that we're receptive. It's the first time I've ever been called receptive in my whole life. Yeah, but she's always receptive. Okay, Hannah?
Was this a successful Q&A session?
You'll have to tell me when we get down. Yeah, I think, again, our priority was to go, there's nothing hidden. I mean, even we had this conversation here, like, so is there anything you hope isn't asked? I was like, I don't know, probably, but I can't think of what that would be.
Yeah, we had a lot of hypotheticals. You didn't hurt me. You want me to throw one out?
You can do whatever you want. You're the warden.
Oh boy. Is Narrate going to become an Anglican church?
Oh, jeez. You just did that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, the reason I ask is just so we've obviously had a lot of discussions over the last few years since Adam's moved his credentialing over to C4SO. And as I said earlier, we've learned a lot about Anglicanism. Is that how you say it? And what we've decided as a council, at least, is we're probably 6 months into this decision, maybe a little less, but we've basically decided, hey, this discussion, there's just a lot of things going on at Narrate right now. We're going to put this on hold for at least a year and just come back to this discussion. Even though, it was on the table a lot when Adam was moving his credential, we're very grateful that C4SO has provided so much to our staff and to our community. But we've decided, that at least as far as council discussion about that we're just going to put that on hold for a while. So.
Yeah, and if I can jump on that part, sorry, were you going to add to that? Well, part of it was just to demonstrate what does a year cycle look like, and just to kind of, you were the first one to say to me, Adam, how long did this take you to get your mind around this? And I was like, a few years. And you were like, thank you. I think it's really important to, I have to, and since we're there, I have to name that when this all first happened, I had no vision for Narrate becoming an Anglican church. Things happened that I did not foresee. I think you guys saw it. I didn't, or saw the potential for it. The other thing that, since we're here, I'm just going to name is one of the hardest things to get your heart and head around when it comes to Anglicanism is that it's creedal, it's not confessional. So, and that's not to denigrate creedal things. Presbyterianism is creedal, Lutheranism is creedal, Roman Catholicism is creedal. Confessional. I got that backwards. Those are all confessional, meaning here's these things you have to believe to be a member in good standing here. Anglicanism is not confessional, it's creedal, meaning to be a member in good standing there, you don't have to be Anglican, you just have to agree to the creeds. So that's very different. So in a C4SO church, you often will have a majority of people who are themselves not Anglican. The other thing, since we're here, that I find really important is if you all told me now, I think we should do this, I would say I disagree. Because there's a new bishop in C4SO, there's dynamics unfolding there that me and the people I trust are saying, like, we got to see where this shakes out. I think we just elected a really, really awesome global leader in that space, but there's decisions that still will get made in the months that follow that I want to see before we make that decision. And frankly, for me, and I've already told Jeff this, a big piece of that conversation is we would need you to come to Helena because I would need you to experience this and affirm that there's not 85 things that need to change for that to be true of us. So it's a long ways out, if ever. Did you have anything to add to that? And did you? And then we're about to go over our 75.
One little question.
Okay.
And it's novel compared to everything else we've discussed.
Okay.
One of the risks was lease, and
Mm-hmm.
there was another question about capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Just what's the relationship like with the public space, Grand Street Theater? Because that's who we lease from, correct?
Yeah, and these guys. So this is separate in our offices.
Yeah, what are the relationships like outside of financial?
With Grand Street, it's awesome. They just hired a new director. I met with her last week. There hasn't been a lot of relationship there since Cal left. It's so good. The last time the rent was raised, we raised it on ourselves. So when we say that lease increases, we're not actually even talking about Grand Street. We're talking about this space and the offices. I'm just blown away at how positive that relationship is. The amount of effort that requires on their part for us to be there is awesome. Yeah. Did you want to say anything? You don't.
I was just going to add on the C4SO bit. So Brian talked about the role of the council before, and a lot of that is just supporting the staff. So we felt it was important to be knowledgeable about C4SO and, Adam in particular, but the staff's relationship with them. So, we did some work to educate ourselves. I would say it's very minimally, but it's important to our staff, so it was important for us to have some knowledge there. And also just, I feel like it's a role of the council too, just to kind of look to the future. And so I think just us gaining some knowledge about that to be able to support our staff was important to us.
Yeah, I had no idea the value that it would add beyond myself. Do you want to say anything in that direction?
I can just add really quickly, like my experience with C4SO. I think my first big experience was when we went to the clergy conference in Kansas City. It was you, Leslie, myself, and then our spouses got to go, and I was really blown away. Like we're not a C4SO church, and I was blown away by their their relationality, their intentionality, just the capacity of leaders that are there, and these ministry professionals that love and care for the people they serve, and then come to these spaces and work really hard to continue that and network and grow and have all sorts of good ideas. And so I was really encouraged and felt really connected relationally with these really incredible group of people. So it was really a positive experience for me.
What was your line when we came back? You had a great line.
I said, it feels like a family reunion. I just hadn't met everyone yet. It was like a family reunion you want to be at.
Great. Okay, do you want to wrap us up, and then we'll stick around and you can ask individual stuff?
Yeah, you can ask any of us individual questions. So there's something really important. You cannot walk out that door with an open beer in your hand. Please, we don't want to end the evening with an open container.
Officer Haven's back there. He'll arrest you right as you do it.
Don't do it. We're going to stack, half or 3/4 of these chairs up against the wall, and we can take those downstairs. There's beverages in the cooler. Help yourself. We'll hang out as long as you'd like. Thanks for being here.
Can I pray?
Yeah.
God, thanks for this time. Thanks for this community that you've put together, and it just is so apparent that you're doing something bigger than any one of us. Pray that you'd help us be good stewards. Pray for the marriages in this room and the future marriages. We just know that's the core of church and community, and therefore the core of where the struggle happens. Pray, God, that you'd help us be the kinds of people who do the hard things. We love you. Amen.
If you'd like to learn more about Narrate Church, find us online at narratechurch.org.
You can also look us up on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks for listening.